guys, and welcome to the 4th episode of the Twisted Siblings podcast. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Kelly.
And we're really excited to be back and doing this again. You guys have been loving our podcast so far, and we love you all. If you have listened to it and enjoyed it, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. It takes you a matter of seconds, it costs nothing, and it really does mean the world to us. So, without further ado, it is Kelly's turn this week. So I'm going to be handing over to Kelly, and let's hear what she has to say.
Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about the murders of Bart and Krista Halderson. Have you heard about these?
I actually haven't, no. I'm not a very namesy kind of person though, so like it might ring a bell when you start talking about it, but as far as I'm concerned, no, I don't know about these now.
Okay. Well, it's fairly recent actually. It happened in 2021, so not that long ago. And I've started with the names of the victims as opposed to the murderer because I don't want to give the story away, but it will all become clear. So, Bart and Krista Halderson had pretty much the perfect life. They'd been married for 27 years, were successful in their careers, and they owned a beautiful home. Krista had been a stay-at-home mum for years to her 2 sons, but now they were older, she had gone back to work and was doing really well in her job. Their 2 sons were Mitchell, he was the oldest and was 24 at the time they were murdered. He was also very successful in his own right. He had a good job as a technical problem solver and was engaged to his long-term partner. And their younger son, Chandler, he was 23. I think there was just 18 months age gap between the 2 of them. Was also successful. They're just an all-round successful family. So he had just completed a degree in IT. He had started an internship at an insurance company and had just recently been successful in getting a job at Elon Musk's company, SpaceX.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, everyone was very proud of him, all very excited, and he was preparing to move away for this job at SpaceX with his partner of 2 years called Kat Melander. Everything was going really well, and on the morning of Friday the 2nd of July, one of Krista's work colleagues became concerned when she didn't turn up to work. So a friend and colleague of Krista's said that it was super unusual for Krista to not turn up, and it was even more unusual for her to not call to say she wasn't going to be in. So he was quite concerned, and after trying to phone her and call her and getting no response, he decided to visit Krista's house after work with his girlfriend. So this guy's name is Daniel Kroninger, and I think he worked with Krista, but they were also friends and they would see each other outside of work. So he drove in the afternoon to her house with his girlfriend, and when he got there, he realised that both cars were parked outside, so feeling a little bit relieved, thinking that maybe she was ill and she was inside, he decided to go to the door, and he was knocking, but nobody was answering.
Oh, I feel like this never ends well though, does it?
It never ends well.
It's always the person at work, and they always go in, and oh no.
Well, he didn't actually find anything, really. He looked through the window after not getting any answer and stated that he didn't really see anything out of the ordinary. But he did notice that the coffee table in the front room was on its side, but that was the only thing out of place that he could find. So he thought he'd try and walk round to the back of the house to see if he could see if anybody was round there and find out what was going on. But just as he was walking down the side door opened and Chandler appeared. So he asked Daniel what he was doing there, what was going on, and David explains that his mum hadn't turned up to work and he was worried about her, and they were just making a courtesy call to find out if anything was wrong. But Chandler explained to them that there's nothing to worry about, don't worry. There'd been an emergency at a family cabin they owned, which was 3 hours up north. There'd been a recent storm, and I think they were worried that it had knocked out like a water tank or something like that. So his mum and his dad had both driven up to the cabin to try and see if they could sort out the problem. So feeling a little bit relieved that they were okay. David thanked Chandler for letting him know and said he'd keep in touch with him over the weekend to find out how they were getting on. And Chandler said that his mum had said she should be back after the weekend and she'd be back to work Monday. So on Monday...
Sorry, still a little bit weird though that she didn't call. If it was 3 hours away...
Yeah, and that she didn't tell work. It is weird because the colleague David says that normally she would always sort of book her annual leave a lot in advance, and she's not really the type of person who would just disappear out like that. But I guess he was just grateful that the son was saying there was a reason why she wasn't there, and probably clinging on to a little bit of hope that she's okay, and that as it was an emergency, maybe that was the reason why.
Forgot. Yeah.
And Chandler said that the reason that his mum hadn't answered any of the phone calls or the text messages is because the signal up at the log cabin was really rubbish, and that they had to wait for the clouds to clear or for it to be a nice day for any signal to come through.
It's always a signal as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that was his excuse anyway.
Okay.
So over the weekend, Chandler spent time with his long-term girlfriend Kat at her family's farm. They had a farm that was not too far away from when Chandler lived, quite a bit of land around it, had like a swimming pool, and over the weekend it was July the 4th as well, so I know they're quite big with that celebration in America. So he'd gone over there for like a little party and they'd all had a really nice time. And then Monday morning rolls around and David says that Krista still did not show up to work, and he was starting to become concerned now because obviously Chandler had said that he would be back, his parents would be back, and they were still not there. And David knew that Krista had a doctor's appointment as well, which she was really, really keen to get to because this appointment had already been cancelled before, and she was upset that she'd had to wait even longer to get there. So he was just thinking in his head she wouldn't miss this because she's already been waiting for so long. So by the time it reached Wednesday the 7th of July, David was so concerned that he urged Chandler to make a missing persons report to the police, as he just knew something wasn't right. So later that morning, Chandler arrived at the police station to inform the police that his parents had not been seen since the following week. Luckily, police do take this quite seriously and start investigating immediately, because I know there's quite a few cases where
so many
they're not too concerned, are they? Just say, well, they're adults, they've gone away for the weekend.
Yeah. I think also that is the rule, isn't it? It's like 48 hours, but I guess by this point it has been 48 hours.
It has, yeah. So maybe that's why. But they send a group of investigators round to the Halderson's house to just see if they can find anything amiss or if there's any clues there. And while they're there and they're talking to Chandler, he's sort of following him around the house saying, oh, you know, this is missing that my parents had taken with them because I helped them pack, and they've taken this with them for their weekend away. And they felt that it was a little bit weird that he was sort of following them round, trying to point out things that weren't there. With this news sort of being quite big, it hit the local media, and well, maybe even the national media actually, because his mum's cousin, Barbie, her name is, actually found out on the news that her cousin and husband were missing. Like, nobody from the family.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, nobody from the family had informed her. So immediately panicking, she phones Chandler and says, like, you know, what's going on? And he repeats the same story, that his parents had gone up to the family cabin, and he says that they were picked up by another couple, and that's why both their cars were still in the drive. Apparently they were picked up at about 5 o'clock in the morning by another couple that he didn't know, and that he had received a text message from his mum over the weekend to say that they had arrived and that they were going to stay up there and go to somewhere else for the July the 4th celebrations. So his mum's cousin is obviously quite concerned, and they decide that they're going to make the trip to... His brother decides that he's going to make the trip up to the family cabin. So he goes up with his fiancée, and it's like a 3-hour drive up north. And when he gets there, he contacts the local police and asks them to go, and they all do a search of the cabin to see if there's anything they can see. And when they're looking around, they realise that nobody's been there for a long time. There's no signs that anybody has stayed there. There's no bags. There's nothing there. Lots of things have got dust on them. Obviously, they're realising that they weren't there, or they didn't make it there. So police broaden their sort of search, trying to look for them, trying to work out what's going on. And luckily, they receive a tip from Chandler's girlfriend's mum. So, as I said earlier, Chandler and his girlfriend Kat had spent the weekend at their house celebrating for July the 4th celebrations. But his Kat's mum says that the following day, on July the 5th, she had been surprised to come out of her house and see Chandler on her land again. So she said she did get on really well with Chandler, but this was the first time in his and Kat's relationship that he'd ever turned up at the property without Kat. He did say that he'd apparently left an answer phone message to ask if he could visit the property to go on the pool, but I don't think she'd received it. So she tells the police this when they're asking sort of about his whereabouts, and just says that she felt it was a little bit weird that he'd turned up without Kat, and it's the first time he'd ever done that. So this immediately piques police's interest, and teams are sent to search the area that Chandler was seen around. And on July the 8th, police make the shocking discovery of a male torso, just a torso, hidden underneath a pile of sticks and twigs. Not far away, they also discovered in an old oil drum a pair of pruning shears, scissors, and a broken bow saw.
Oh my God.
I know, it's awful. So the body was actually identified as that of Bart Halderson, and preliminary autopsy results revealed that he had been shot in the back twice. Police begin to zero in on Chandler, and he's brought in for questioning.
So we don't know where the mum is at this point?
We still don't know where the mum is.
Okay.
The mum is still a missing person. But obviously they found the dad, and they found him in the location that Kat's mum had sort of said she'd seen Chandler in on her farm.
So he was hiding him in plain sight, basically?
They own a farm, and there's like a
Oh,
woodland around it. So
Fine.
from what I was reading, that he had taken the body into the woods.
Okay.
And that's sort of the area that they had seen Chandler in. So they bring him in for questioning, but it's cut short because he requests a lawyer. So they begin to search for a motive while they're waiting to continue to question Chandler. They're sure that he's responsible for his father's death. I mean, all of the signs are there, aren't they? He's missing, and he turns up exactly where somebody has seen him. But they can't understand why he would do this to his dad and presumably his mum, because she's still a missing person. So they do a lot of digging and find something that completely throws the case and that they didn't expect. So after looking into everything, they found out that Chandler had actually lied about completing his IT degree, and he had lied about his internship at the insurance company, and he'd even lied about getting his job at SpaceX.
Did the mum and dad suss him?
So they also found that just before they were murdered, his dad had started to become suspicious of everything that he was saying, because Chandler had said that it was his graduation, but his parents couldn't go, and there was like lots of things that just weren't lining up. So Bart, his dad, pretended to be Chandler and phoned up the college that he was supposed to be completing his degree at. And when he was on the phone to them, they basically said, we have no record of you. There's no record of you attending. There's no record of you completing a degree. So he phoned Chandler. He was obviously confused and cross and wondering what was going on. And he had arranged a meeting at the college with Chandler and the admissions team to find out what was going on. And that meeting was supposed to have taken place on July the 1st, which was the day before anyone last saw them. So, what?
Oh my God.
I mean, even if you have made up something like that, I can't understand why you would then feel it necessary to
kill
Yeah.
But also, like, I
Just,
get that there's a level of embarrassment because you chose to lie. But one, why lie in the first place to your parents? Maybe you feel like you would have let them down, or there's like as they're all successful, there's like a level to upkeep. But also, they're your parents, so like you get the slap on the wrist and you say sorry, like.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I can understand maybe like, yeah, like you say, the need to sort of fit in. They're all successful, both the parents and his brother, but you can't live a lie forever either, can you? So surely it's better to just come clean and then actually start making amends, maybe, if that's what you want to do, or if that's not what you want to do, have that discussion. But to actually murder your parents.
So did his girlfriend think that he worked at the?
Yeah, so his girlfriend believed absolutely everything that he was saying as well, and she had actually began to sort of pack up her whole life and get ready to move with him across to wherever this new job was.
Oh my God.
So yeah, she genuinely believed that he was a successful person. She was quite adamant that he hadn't committed any of these crimes, and I think she was really sort of had his back for a while.
Well, it's hard to believe that someone you love would do that, isn't it?
I know, and to their own parents as well. And I think she had quite a close relationship with his parents too. So I guess that just makes it even harder, doesn't it, when you're sort of involved in the whole family dynamic.
So the mum's still missing, right?
So the mum's still missing, yeah. And after they sort of find the body and the motive, Chandler's arrested and charged with first-degree murder, mutilating a corpse and hiding a corpse. Police continue to question him on the whereabouts of his mum, but he lawyers up and refuses to talk to them. Luckily, at this point, I think his girlfriend is starting to sort of come around to the idea that maybe he's not being quite as honest, and she discloses that he has previously cheated on her quite a few times in the relationship, and because of this, she had been tracking his whereabouts. And a couple of days before, when the parents had gone missing, she had gone on Snapchat and she had noticed that he was at a location 25 miles away, which she found quite suspicious. And she actually screenshotted the location of where he was on her phone. So she hands this information over to the police, and they send a team down to the area that had been marked on Snapchat. And they begin a search, and while they're there, they locate 2 human legs that have been cut up into pieces. These legs are sent off for forensic analysis and are later determined to belong to Krista.
I was going to ask, where were the rest of the body?
So from what I was reading, I didn't hear anything about what happened to the rest of the body. So whether or not it was by a river and it wasn't located, or they were located at some point, but the legs were cut up into pieces, so I should imagine the body was like that as well. And his dad, obviously, they found his dad's torso,
But not
too, so he'd also cut up his dad.
So, but did they ever find the rest of it? No.
I don't know, actually. From what I was like, everything I read never mentioned anything about whether they found the rest of it, but they might well have.
I guess not that they need to. They know they've got the body, so.
But that's just taking it to new extremes, isn't
I
it? He
mean,
didn't even just kill them, he's actually chopped them up.
Like,
into
there's one
pieces.
thing to pull a trigger, like, but then there's another thing to pull a trigger and then to continue to dismember your mum and dad, the people that created your life. And I mean, that can't be something that is just done in like a couple of minutes. Like, there has to be a moment.
Well, no, 'cause it's no easy feat, is it, to chop up a body?
No, like, so there should be at some
It's going to take some real work and some real hours, I should
strength,
imagine.
I would say, as well. Like, and is there not a moment that you sit there and think, wow, what I'm doing is really wrong, but then continue to do it anyway? I don't know.
Honestly, it's just awful to think about his poor parents.
I know, and imagine that being your own son that's doing that to you.
I know. And now his poor brother as well, he's also sort of left with now having no parents and knowing that his brother was a murderer.
Yeah, because it was just the 2 brothers, right? So
Just
that's
the 2
it
brothers.
now. That's all he's got.
Yeah.
He's just on his own.
Yeah, it's awful.
Wow.
So Chandler was actually found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. He was found guilty of providing false information, mutilating a corpse, and hiding a corpse. And this was for both parents, and he was actually found guilty on all 8 charges and has been convicted to life imprisonment, which is definitely what he deserves, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. Also, thank God for Stalker Girlfriend.
Right? And Snapchat location.
Right? If we were talking about a case back in like the 1980s, never would have happened because they didn't have
Wouldn't have been a thing, would it?
No, we have location on everything now, which is amazing. And we do have girlfriends that apparently track their boyfriends, which came in handy at this point. But
Yes, it did.
That is the power of social media and the power of like our phones is amazing, because you see these kind of cases where someone goes missing and it blows up. And I think like if you were ever in that situation, like you would just hope that your friends would just blow up the social media and you were everywhere. Because I remember seeing like cases that were in America and I'd be so heavily invested and I'd be looking, and we all turn into little mini investigators, but I think getting the word out there is just so good.
Yeah, so important. So important. But then I think with the amount, everybody should have their cases like that. You know, I think we hear a lot about some, don't we? But we don't hear anything about others.
Yeah, I do remember listening to a couple of cases where there'd been like, it had been the same time as a very, very popular case. So their case has gone like under the radar, which I think is so, so sad, because like everyone deserves the same amount of press, but it just doesn't happen like that. And I do really love that we can listen to like certain podcasts or certain programs that do actually take time to cover the cases that weren't given that exposure in the first place.
Yeah, because it must be so difficult for the families, mustn't it, to feel like their whole world is ending, but nobody else seems to be paying it any attention.
So this is like, I think, the most recent case that we've heard. Normally all these messed up cases, they're like quite a few years ago, aren't they?
I know, and it was weird when I was listening to this as well to think that it was after COVID, because for some reason COVID is like a weird sort of reality to me, and I just feel like everything that's ever come after COVID is just not real.
Yeah, it's like it should be a timestamp, shouldn't it? Like, you know, like it's
like BC and AD before COVID and after COVID.
Yes, 100%.
No, so I've looked, and from the couple of sort of articles and that I've read, it doesn't actually say anything about finding any further remains. It does say that the medical examiner was unable to determine how Chandler Halderson died, so I'm wondering if that's because there was just not enough of her remains found to be able to identify a cause.
Oh yeah, because they found the dad's torso and there was obviously
2 gunshots on there.
Yeah.
And I think they did later locate the gun that he used to kill his father at the farm as well, where he buried him. Okay. So whether or not his mum was shot as well.
Where do you hide a body?
I know.
Wow. Well, that was interesting. A little disturbing.
A little bit scary, isn't it? To think, could have killers in our houses right now.
Statistically, it's always someone you know. Statistically, I saw this thing the other day. It was a reel, and they had filmed their partner, and they were like saying all the qualities he had, like good looking. But did you know statistically, this guy would actually be the guy to kill me? And do you know why that is? Because he's my husband. And it was like a comedy skit, but it was really funny because the way she like made it out, and then it ended like that, and I was like, well, statistically that is true. It is normally.
It is, isn't it? Because when a woman goes missing, or a man goes missing, it's always their partner that they look at first, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
That's generally.
And whenever I listen to podcasts and stories, I'm always like, yep, it was the husband. It was the husband, or it was the wife.
It's the husband.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said in the beginning, please, please, please leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the podcast. They really help us. And we will see you at the same time next week. So our episodes released every Monday, 7 a.m. Please let us know if you enjoyed this over on our Instagram. leave us a comment, send us a message, or let us know if there's any cases that you found that you want us to cover, because I'm sure there's a lot out there that you know and we don't. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.